Okay, good Vach, everyone, and you're welcome to Motzei Shabbos Sichos Haran Shir. The Sicha that we're dealing with today has quite a lot of moving parts, as it were, even though the essential message is very simple. Rabbeinu starts with it and finishes with it. And in between, Rabbeinu goes into a rather long explanation of a very philosophical nature, at least philosophy the way that it was learned and dealt with during his time. Since that time, the past 200 years, universities no longer deal with the truth. Truth doesn't matter anymore. But in Rabbeinu's time, there was still, sort of like making believe that truth actually mattered. And it's not really easily understood what their questions actually mean. But there is Uvda Lamaisa, which is easily, that lends itself rather easily to Avodas Hashem. So this is something that B'ezras Hashem will touch. Let's just share the Sicha, and let me just put it here and make it bigger so you guys can see it easily. He'll just note if you can see it well. Let me try this and make it a little bit bigger. Can you see it? Brother Rosenfeld. Okay, good. So this is Sicha Mem 40. First of all, I'll just read it from beginning to end. It's rather long here, but it's one long drush, so it's easy to keep in mind. Be'inyan Sifra Mechakrim. This is the books of those who investigate matters using logic and investigation. It is well established by us a few times. It is forbidden to learn in them. And you have to keep yourself away from learning them. And don't even look after them. Even those Sfarim of Gdolei Yisrael that go on the gang of proving things logically and so forth and so on, such as Moira Nevochim, the guy that's perplexed by the Rambam, and Sabta Barbanel, and many others. It says the Issa Godel Londotam. It says a big Issa to learn them. And there is sort of like a parenthetical ha'ara. And he says it's already explained in a few Sfarim how great a prohibition it is to learn them. It's not something that a Jew should partake. We don't belong there. Here comes a very central sentence. Ki anu ma'aminim bo yisborach. Be'emuno levad bli shum chakira. In simple faith, without any proof. We believe that what? Ki hu yisborach boras olam kuloi. He created the entire world. And he sustains his world. And he is going to renew his world. In the way of those books, to ask questions that seem at the first glance to be like tremendous questions. And the answer is usually very, very meek. Anybody who wants to investigate further and go look deeper, and ask a kasha on the teretz, you can very easily question it. The teretz won't help. He's forbidden to look at them at all. And he says, all their questions and klum, they're nothing. They're all just simple insanity. They're just narishkeit. And that which we see, see some people that are not naturally inclined after, awesomely holy Sfarim like Sifrei Zohar and Sifrei Arizatzal, even though they have unbelievable chidushim that enlighten one's eyes and they're sweeter than honey. Vehem, and these people, they're different things that they attract them. Kigon chakiras. You should know that the reason for that zomechmas mizgam ki mizgam betiv, that's because of their nature. Ki mizgam betivu mumezeg ramin atoloda. It's a nature. It's corrupt from birth. In other words, it's genetic. Shenoldu b'mezeg ra. They were born with a bad inclination. That what? She'einam yichol yizbol et hadover hakodesh be'emes. They cannot stand something which is really holy. Really, any person has free choice. And he has a koyach to break his bad inclination, his bad nature. Since a person was born, with such a bad nature, he has to go through a great bitterness. The shabbos mizgoy v'tivara, to break down his state of being and his state of his bad nature. And he says, "V'ashrei la'adam," and how fortunate is a person. Shenoilad b'kedusha, was born b'kedusha. And the next thing, this is when Rabbeinu starts going into, this is first of all the first statement about how a person should be and what's the right way to be and how the right way to behave. Now, interestingly enough, we say we're going into the more philosophical part, as it were. And one needs to understand why Rabbeinu decided that he needed this, and we'll take it somewhere where we can handle it. But since Rabbeinu said it, and so it's Kodesh Kodeshim, so we have to learn and see what it says. And it says as follows: "V'nimtzo b'sifreim," it is found in their Sfarim, Kashas al Seder Bria. You have questions on the order of Bria. Ma zocha koichov liot koichov. Why did a star, was fortunate to be a star, or a mazel to be a mazel, or the mazel was zocha to be a mazel? And what is the sin? What is the grievous sins of the lower things that will be so low, like behemoths and chayes and bugs, and why these are so ethereal and important and amazing, and these are like so low. And why wasn't it upside down? Why isn't the head? Why is the head and the foot a foot? Why should it be the opposite? In all these kind of kashas at great length in the books, and it says the whole thing is utter nonsense from beginning to end. It says we don't have to investigate and find Hashem Baruch's reasons. Ki tzaddik v'yosher hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is tzaddik and yosher, and everything he does is proper. And now Rabbeinu gets into an answer to this particular kasha that B'ezrat Hashem will talk about a bit later. In real, when you should know what the truth is. Ki kol ha'olam kuloi, the entire world, the entire existence, ubchinas galgal achoizer. It's like a Ferris wheel that keeps on turning. Shekorim svivon, a dreidel, V'akol chozech lila, everything repeats itself. V'nisapach me'adam malach u'mimalach adam. It turns that from a man it becomes an angel, from an angel it becomes a man. U'mirosh regel, and from a head becomes a leg, and from a leg becomes a head. V'chen sha'a kol ha'dvarim sheba'olam, and the same thing applies to all the things in the world. Kulam choizrim chalila, they all keep on turning. And they roll and they turn over from one thing to the other. And from this to that. From superlative one, it becomes the lowest one. And from the lowest one, it turns into afterwards, it incarnates as the higher one. And he says, because in truth, Bashirish, at the root of all beings, Akol Echad. Everything is one entity. He says now he gets it, so because Yesh Nivdolim, that those who are totally separate from any physicality. The Hayno Malachim, the angels, they are totally separate from the non-material. There's no matter involved in the existence of malachim. V'yesh galgalim, and then there's galgalim, shem chomer, which means this is like energy. Aber chomer zach me'od, there's no mamoshes to energy. There's no mass to energy, but nevertheless it is chomer. There's material. Yesh olam hashafel, and then there's this world. This particular word, ashafal, with the lower one, shechomer gomer is a total mass, it's total material. Even though each one of them has it's taken from its own specific place, spiritually. In the root, Hakol Sham Kulachad, over there everything is one entity. Valken Kol Ha'olam Kuloi, that's why the entire world of Chinas Galgal HaChoyzer. This is a repeating wheel that keeps on turning. Vakol Choyzer V'nisapech, everything repeats and turns over. Shata, now, Zeh Dover B'china Elyoino, this thing is in the supernal B'china, B'chinas Roish. And something else, now something else is a low bechina. It's like a leg. ואחר כך נסהפך וחוזר, then it turns over, and it flips over, ונעשה מבחינת רגל, מבחינת ראש. Then from being an aspect of a leg, it becomes an aspect of a head. ומראש רגל, and from a head, it becomes a leg. וכן נסהפך מאדם מלאך למלאך אדם. A person becomes a malach, and a malach becomes an adam. And now Rabbeinu brings some examples for that. כמו שמצינו שאמרו אותנו זיכרונו לברכה, שהשליחו מלאכים מן השמיים, that malachim were cast from the heavens, אל העולם השפל, ונכנסו בחומר גמור, and they became in total material, Actually, Baal-Taivas, they were tremendous Baal-Taivas, they were worse than people. That Malachim came into this world and they were cloaked in a matter. We also found the other way. That became Malach Matat. This is the returning wheel, shikurim sevivon, they're called a dreidel. Everything keeps on repeating. In the shorsh, everything is one. And now he mentions that you can find that the foot of one level of being is more important and is higher than the head of somebody else. And the same thing in the upper oilamus, because the lowest madrega of the world above, Ubemala Yoser, is more important and more exalted than madrega el yoino shalom atachtam imino, the world that comes after it. But everything keeps on returning, everything keeps on, this becomes that, the up becomes down, and down becomes up. And Rabbeinu says that this is the game that we play on Chanukah b'Sivivon with the dreidel. Because Chanukah represents a B'chinas Beis HaMikdash. Ve'ikar bina Beis HaMikdash yeh b'china anal. The main inyan of creating Beis HaMikdash is the fact that what we may think is up may be down, and what we think is down may be up. B'chinas galgal ha'chayza. Ki Beis HaMikdash itself haya b'chinas elyonim lamata v'tachtonim lamala. It was the expression of the concept that the supernal ones came down and the lower ones went up. Since Hashem Baruch Hu has resided his Shechina in the Mishkan, in the tabernacle, in the Beis HaMikdash, in the temple, that represents the concept that the supernal ones are down. All the plans of the Mishkan, it's all everything was pre-planned above. This is what the dreidel represents. Everything turns and repeats itself. The up goes down, the down goes up. He says, because if you're trying to use logic, it's a very far matter. Is way beyond any spirituality. There's no spirituality that can perceive HaKadosh Baruch Hu, let alone physicality. His Shechina will be constricted in the tools of the Mishkan. And the heavens and heavens above the heavens cannot sustain HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hashem Yisbarach showed is exactly the opposite of what they thought. Hashem Yisbarach Hu put his Shechina dafka in a Mishkan of cloth and leather, gold and silver, and so forth. It's such a when you try to think logically, it's such a strange thing. Al pichakira, that a person is such a low being, will have the ability to change things above. Or behema shfelo, a low behema, yoma kavimata lekoban, will be, brought as an offering. That it will become a smell that will be a nachas ruach for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shemova Omer v'nasa l'tzeinu, that the HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, and his Ratzon became. There are two kashas here. Why didn't the HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants, animal sacrifices? What kind of nachas ruach HaKadosh Baruch Hu gets from that? So so we say that the main nachas ruach HaKadosh Baruch Hu that he said in his will was done. And Rabbeinu says, "V'ech shach rotzen etzlo yisbarach." How is bichlal neigea that there will be any will by HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Any will, to begin with, denotes the fact that there is a lack. If you move your hand, you have to want to move your hand from here to here. Why would you want to move your hand from here to here? Is because when your hand is here, you have a need, you have a lack for your hand being here. So you want to move it from here to here. So any kind of will represents a lack that you want to fill. Kadosh Baruch Hu doesn't lack anything. So how is it shach b'chlal a will by Kadosh Baruch Hu? Al be'emes, in truth, Hashem Yisborach le'efech midaitam. Kadosh Baruch Hu says exactly the opposite of anybody's logic. Ki be'emet Hashem Yisborach yishra shechina soy lemata b'mishkan beis hamikdash. He dafka reside his shechina down in the Mishkan and beis hamikdash. V'beheimo, and the beast also reach michoyach, and it caused great pleasure to Kadosh Baruch Hu. Ze b'chinas ilyonim lemata, the above, the supernal ones are below. The tachtonim, the low ones, are above. B'chinas galgal achoyzer, b'chinas svivan, this is the dreidel. And he says, and now there is, besides the spiritual koyach, and besides the potential, which is even above the spiritual, Rabbeinu Nam mentions another state of being. It's called the koch hiyuli. Something is called hiyuli, that is brought down in their books. That's the in-between when something is in potential and something becomes a reality. So between being a potential, a possibility, and for something to become a reality, there's an in-between state which is called hiyuli. Every single thing that exists first starts as a possibility, because everything exists, first of all, was possible. Afterwards, it exits the state of being possible and it becomes actual. When it exits, a theoretical state of theoretical possibility and becomes an actual reality, in between, yesh bechina, something which is called hiyuli. That's the midway between potential and actuality. That's the root of everything that exists. Everything comes out of that hiyuli state. They are all first in a state of koach hiyuli. All the existences, all the realities that come out of there. That we mentioned, they are the separate ones. These are malachim. that are totally spiritual, v'agalgalim, which exist totally in the realm of energy. The shvalim, this is everything which is in the level of matter. Kulam chozrim chalila. V'chozer b'nisapech, everything comes and flips over. Minivda l'shafel, from something which is totally spiritual, it becomes something which is totally physical. Mishafel nivdal, and from something which is totally low and physical, it becomes totally spiritual. V'chen kulam, and the rest of them. Ki b'shara shekula echad kana, because in the Shosh everything is one. He says that this are the letters that are engraved on the sevivon, the dreidel. Shem hein nun gimel shin. In Israel, they taught us, they changed the shin and they put pei because it says nes gadol hayapo. But in Chutz La'aretz, it's nes gadol hayasham. A great miracle was there. So the letters that are on the different sides of the dreidel, the four sides of the dreidel is Hey, Nun, Gimel, and Shin. These are the acronyms of Hiyuli, it's the Hey, Nivdal, the spiritual, that's the Nun, Galgal, that's the energetic, and Shofel, that's the physical. Shem Klal Bria, the Kulam Chozim Chalel, they're all rolling and become, from this becomes that, and this becomes that. And all this is alluded to in Chanukah. It's Chanukah's Beis Hamikdash. Shesham haya elyonim lamad v'tachtonim lamala. That's the dreidel. Rabbeinu says, "V'zeh b'chinas ha'geula." Because the Ikar Geula will be b'china chazeres chalila. The elyonim will be down and tachtonim will be above. There was a Beis Hamikdash. This is why when they came out of Mitzrayim, immediately Sichos Haran, they said, they already said they're going to have a Beis Hamikdash. In other words, they already announced the building of Beis Hamikdash. This is the main Geula, the Beis Hamikdash. Because the Beis Hamikdash is the epitome of that ever-changing, kaleidoscopic state that the spiritual becomes physical and the physical becomes spiritual. And Mimela, that's why he says these letters, Shem Hangash, is Rosh Hashanah's Ga'alta Sheber Chalasecha Hatzion. He's talking about Hamikdash. This is, you will come and you will plant them in the mountain of your Nachum. This is Beis Hamikdash, the returning wheel. This is the main Geula. And look in the Mamar and the Kutam Tanina, Terazain, that when it says in Chanukah, it says Vayimiketz. Over there it says a lot about Elyon and Lamata, Tachton and Limala, and of Chanukah, which is the migration of Beis Hamikdash. Talk about the B'chinas Makifin that's talked in this Maimar. Again, all is this Makifin is this cycle, this Galgal Achoyz, this Svivon, is the Makifin that surround. It's a very, very, very deep concept. And now Rabbeinu says, let's go back to the first matter. We don't have to get into chakiras at all. It's a great prohibition. Only what? We believe in Kodesh Baruch Hu in simple emunah. He created all the worlds, kulam, and he holds, he sustains them. And in the future, he will recreate the world completely. Okay. We have here two basic inyonim that we need to deal with. The first one is the fact that Rabbeinu says, listen, all you need is a emunah pshuta. You don't need to prove anything. You don't have to explain how science and Torah meets and fit together, and all those things. There's no need for that. Because God created the world. This is it. This is the reason why we're dealing with Parshas. The Tasaf Bereshis doesn't deal with halacha at all, except for Ilchas Milah. There's nothing in there that it has to do with us. It's a parsha of this week. The entire Bereshis is stories. Rabbeinu says how fortunate we are. Kodesh Baruch did not start with all kinds of scientific proofs or philosophical discussions. He just stated, Bereshit bara Elokim es hashamayim v'es haaretz. Period. That's the fact. Everything stems from there. The truth of the matter is that this is the reason why this is so important is because in Midas Yesod, which we have been talking about in the past few weeks, different aspects of Midas Yesod, we spoke about how Midas Yesod is, realizing that you have, and therefore being very careful with your resources, and spending them judiciously. Obviously, Midas Yesod is a midah of Kedusha. That is, realizing that your resources are limited and make sure that they need to go where they need to go, whether it is morally or whether it is the things that one says and so forth and so on. But ultimately, the Midas Yesod is the embassy between one state of being and another. Midas Yesod includes all the spheres in it. And all the spheres, obviously, each one has all the spheres in there. But Midas Yesod is the way that a person gives and receives from a different person. In the physical sense, the entirety of a person is connecting to another person. We have to understand, we would like to think of ourselves as being our own person. We form our own opinion. We make up our own minds. We know what is good and what is good, and our opinion is totally individual. It is totally rational, or emuna, whatever it is that we decide which label we like to affix to ourselves. And it's totally rational. I mean, it's very clear to me. But the truth of the matter is that we are extremely impressionable. Again, we're getting influenced by our surrounding all the time. And in fact, each and every person's state of das is really a smorgasbord of all the different influences that the person has been exposed to in his life. That is the reason why it is so important to pick and choose your source of influence, who you're influenced by. It is so important not, first of all, to stay away from those who, those who set the pace, who determine the what they call in Hebrew data kahal, the opinion of the masses. Because the minute a person consumes influence in a state of mass, he loses his ability to even critically think about what he's influenced by. You'll notice that whenever there is elections, the people don't explain their opinions. In fact, the explanations don't matter. The thing that matter is slogans. When people get into a feminine, into a mass state of existence, where a mass psychology, they become feminine, very easily influenced and intuitive. And whatever propaganda, whatever it is that you want them to change their mind, has to be directed to the lowest ignoramus amongst them all. So that's why the spreading of the information, of whatever it is message you want to give, will spread the furthest. Now, what I told you now has been stated by the most evil master of propaganda of all time, which is Hitler, Yamach Shemayim. All this is written plain out in Mein Kampf. Says that's the way. And the truth of the matter is, you can lie flat out, which they did, which they do in America, in Israel, in Germany, in any country in the world. You can lie just bold-faced, it doesn't matter. And they're filled with contempt to the intelligence of the masses, because when people think in masses, they lose all their intelligence. So Rabbeinu says, don't learn these foreign. Don't be exposed to them, because you will be influenced by that. So the thing that you can do, the way to work it, to work the system, is to know that I'm impressionable. If I read the news pages of various newspapers, even when I disagree with what they're saying, I'm influenced by that. They're taking me into their level. They're taking me into their worlds of this is good and this is bad because of temporal reasons. What we need to do is we need to believe in the Kadosh Baruch Hu, in the Torah, in the Tzaddikim, and stay away for bad influence. And you should know there are no free lunches. Whatever you look at influences you. Whatever you read influences you. You think that you can read and pick and choose? I'm telling you, you can't. Rabbeinu is telling you, you can't. That's why the language Rabbeinu uses is so severe. He says, Isur Gadol, it's a big prohibition. Why? Just don't do it. But Isur Gadol, a big prohibition, what's the big deal? The big deal is that you have no filter. It says in Sfarim, I'm not sure who is it saying it. He says that the world is divided into Ish Ha'am, the men of the people, and Ish Tzura, the men of form. These are the tzaddikim. They're the only ones who can actually go and be exposed to these influences without being inflicted by them. You can see Moshe Rabbeinu. He started in the teva, in the cask, and then he was taken to the house of Parak, which is a house of Avodah Zarah. But being Ish Tzur, he wasn't influenced by it. A regular person would have never come out of there. And so on and so on. So this is the first Indian where we're talking about the fact that there is a need to stay away from foreign sources of intelligence and data and opinion. But it's interesting. Okay. Play Scrabble, play solitaire. I don't care what you do, but stay away from the news. All the news you'll ever need, you'll get in the mikveh. Trust me. You don't need anything else. Whatever it is you need to know, you'll know. The minute you're open to one source of information, to one source of data, to one sort of opinion forming, you are pliable. That's the first matter that Rabbeinu speaks about, and it's extremely important to internalize. The second thing is the question. Rabbeinu deals with very, very exalted philosophical inyanim over there. But for us, it all boils down to the question that sometimes we ask ourselves. Why was I born to this mother and father? Why did I go through the childhood that I went through? Why did this happen to me? And why did that happen to me? And why do I have such a problem concentrating, such ADD? Or why do I live in such fears? Why am I susceptible to such histrionics? Why am I not smarter than I am? All these kind of questions that a person inevitably, he can look back on his life and say, I take a look at the people that took the same journey that I did. And at the times where things were really important to stay the course, they did and I didn't. And they are Kinanahara, Tabedei Chachamim, and Tzaddikim, and Oivdei Hashem, and look at me. Now, the years pass, I'm getting older. There's no way to change, the past. And why did I do this? And why did I do that? Rabbeinu says, it's all a dreidel. And this Gilgul, this is where you're supposed to be. How far you're from perfection doesn't matter. Reb Nelson says, Likut Halachos, about in this week's Parsha, before HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Avraham Avinu, he tells him, he says, shall I hide? I will not hide whatever it is that I do from Avram. He says, Ki adasi asher yitzaves bono lebeisoi, he will order his household and his children, to go in the derech Hashem, lasos tzedakah and mishpat. Go in the way of Hashem to do tzedakah, charity, and mishpat, which is justice. Now, tzedakah and mishpat are two contradictive terms. Tzedakah is something that you extend even though the other person doesn't deserve it. Mishpat means that you're very particular. You give where it is earned, you give it. Where it is not, you don't. Tzedakah and mishpat, like the Piyutin says, Rosh Hashanah, it says, in the place of mishpat, there's not tzedakah. In the place of tzedakah, there's no mishpat. But you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you're doing tzedakah. In the mishpat, you're doing tzedakah. Within the mishpat, you're doing tzedakah. Also explains as follows. The world cannot exist on the midah of the mishpat alone. If it was just a matter of justice, the minute a person would have wavered a hair length breadth from the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's finished. That's it. It's like stepping out of the window, on the 30th floor and says, I'm not falling down. Yeah, you can say that for as long as it takes to reach the ground. The Kadosh Baruch Hu's reality. You cannot do anything against reality. Al pi midas hamishpat. On the other hand, so mimela there has to be a of tzedakah. Kadosh Baruch Hu is full with rachmanas and gives you a leeway. But the thing is that it's a tricky balance. Because on the other hand, you can just take yourself to the point and say, I don't have to worry about it. Kadosh Baruch Hu is going to extend me credit. I don't have to worry about it. Anybody who does that, anybody who has a credit card that kept on, in Hebrew they call it ironing the credit card without any cheshbon and getting more loans and getting more this, suddenly one day surprisingly enough, found there's a mountain of debt that he totally crumbles on. Suddenly they're not they're not Mr. Nice Guy anymore. This is all a euphemism for Olam Haba. You have credit. You have a misgeret. You can get a loan. But if you don't make a cheshbon of what it is that you're doing and make sure that there's more coming in than going out, don't be surprised to wake up in the morning with a huge deficit that you can't get out of. And this is here. You can always declare bankruptcy or whatever it is. Olam Haba, these things don't work. So what does work? What does work is what we learned about the Indian of Mishpat, not to go too much to the right and too much to the left. The answer is you should always, always, always do everything that you can to do the Ratzon HaKadosh Baruch Hu and not give in to yourself an iota. There is no reshus to fantasize illicit fantasies. I'm sorry. There is no permission whatsoever. Rabbeinu says that the Hirura creates an actual reality in Olam Yisrael. You wouldn't do it in front of Rabbeinu because Rabbeinu knew what you're thinking. Trust me, if Rabbeinu knows what you're thinking, Kadosh Baruch Hu knows what you're thinking, and he's here all the time. Just a little bit, I'm not really going there. I'm just going, close, close to the edge, close to the borderline, it's just a little bit, no, I'm not, really. You're really. As we learned in Spurim Isis, the exchange children, being the monarch means elevating the Shekhinah in your thought, in your speech, in your deed. Now, what about all the stuff that already failed? What about all the weak points, that I find myself, that I falter in? This, you rest on the tzedakah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, on the Rachmanis of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So it seems so like, yeah, but when do I do this and when do I do that? There is no clear-cut answer except when you are establishing an intimate relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. You speak to him, you open things up, you speak about it. And whatever it is you still can't do, you bring it up. If you found yourself doing things you shouldn't be doing, it'll be watching movies, it'll be, surfing the net, it could be, speaking to women, I don't know what it is. Or not dealing the way one needs to in business, or, not be makpid enough to say nothing off time, and so forth and so on. And right now, you find yourself that you keep on keeping on. Talk to Kadosh Baruch Hu about it. Deal with it by speaking to Kadosh Baruch Hu. Because you need to remember the secret of actually combining tzedakah and mishpat is whenever it is that you do, whatever it is that you're not supposed to do, bring it to Kadosh Baruch Hu. Snitch on yourself. Ask him, what am I going to do? I keep on doing it. I can't get out of it. It's when you despair from talking to Kodesh Baruch Hu about it when things get rough. This is when you either abuse the system or not use the system the way you should. You overjudge yourself or you're being over lenient with yourself. The secret is you have to rest on the merit of the tzaddik. The Kodesh Baruch Hu will extend to you all the rachamim. As long as you're osek b'tshuva. What it means osek b'tshuva? That you bring it all to Kodesh Baruch Hu. You talk about it all. You open it all up. Ad kan, Sichos Haran for this week. In Yitz Hashem, Monday, we will continue with Ma'aseh Mechiga and learn how to operate with the specific Gilgul that we are, dealing with our deficiencies as they are, of IQ, temperament, age, proclivities, whatever. We'll all have a good week. B'ezrat Hashem, I'll see you all on Monday. Hatzlacha b'kol